Heart first leadership isn't what you say, it's how you show up, how you regulate, how you communicate, and how you execute when it matters most. We are Heidi and Ryan Sawyer, and you are listening to the Heart First Leadership Podcast.
Welcome back to the show. Today, I am honored to bring you a friend and the man who I first hired as my life coach, and also somebody who guided me on helping me understand what it looked like to be a coach as well. So Bill Tierney is a results coach, a certified IFS practitioner. Bill is a prolific content creator and writer and has created several signature programs, including the Self-Led Project and Self-Led Results. Bill does group coaching and also works with people one-on-one. He's also the co-host of a podcast called Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching. Bill is married to Kathy and lives in Liberty Lake, Washington. They have 5 children and 12 grandchildren and 1 great-grandson. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. The two of us always, when we get together, do not spend much time on the surface. So you're going to hear us dive into the depths and really have a powerful conversation of what it looks like to transform, to do the inner work, to be able to come back out to the world and lead with your heart. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the show. So excited to be sharing this moment with you, Bill. Just absolutely respect and everything that you have done with your life, you are doing, and I'm sure I'm going to take a moment here in just a minute to share a little bit of the impact that you've made on me. So just excited for you to be here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. I enjoyed having you on my show. It was a great
that was a blast.
Yeah,
it was a blast. Really looking forward to connecting more with Martin too and getting to know a little bit more about what he does too. So excited for you to be here. What I want to just jump right into the deep end of the pool. I don't like to beat around the bush. You know that I don't really like surface level conversations, so we're not going to talk about the weather. I do want to hear from you though. Just if you can, for the listeners who are visiting this podcast right now, give them a screenshot, a glimpse into your life that says, like, what was that moment in your life that shifted things to where you begin to lead with your heart that has led you to the work that you now do in the world?
Leading with my heart didn't begin until I'd been sober for about 22, 23 years. I got sober November 15th, 1982, because I was scared that my marriage was going to end if I didn't get sober. I didn't believe I had a problem. I just believed that she thought I had a problem. And if I demonstrated that I was going to do something about it, she might stay with me.
Gotcha.
My heart didn't crack open as much as it needed to, probably, I should say, till I'd been sober for about 23 years. By the way, what a disappointment to find that just getting sober and abstaining from alcohol wasn't enough to make my life whole. To solve all my problems and to fix what was broken. I still felt broken. I still felt like an imposter and a fraud. And I was involved in a 12-step program where being sober for a long period of time was the measure of success. So I would walk into one of the meetings and they would recognize me as, oh, there's Bill that's been sober X number of years. And that's all they needed to know about me, because that was the primary goal, was staying sober a long time. I'd achieved that, and I was anxious. I was depressed, very fearful, lots of judgments, lots of other addictions, including those meetings. So after my second marriage ended, I'm really intentionally not going into a lot of detail here, not because it's a secret. I'm very transparent about all this stuff, as you know.
Sure.
I just want to be conscious of time. After the second marriage ended, I will say my first wife died of a brain tumor after I'd been sober for 7 years. And it threw me into a tailspin that another 12 years later before I began to recover from that.
Sure.
And it was about that same time, 12 years later, after the second marriage ended, that I desperately was trying to find something somewhere, somehow, where I could get get my hands on the levers of my own suffering. And I found the work of Byron Katie. Ironically, the work of Byron Katie is a very cognitive, intellectual process, and it cracked my heart wide open. And so interesting. You wouldn't expect it. Yeah. So I can certainly provide more detail about that. But what it was about that cracked my heart open was that I realized what she says is true, that when I am suffering, it's because of how I'm perceiving what's going on in my life. It's not because of what's going on in my life. That was a shocker.
Yeah.
Once that landed for me, and I actually had some experience of realizing, oh yeah, so here's a direct connection to the idea that I'm suffering because of how I perceive something, not because of what's that something is that's happening, not because of the trigger, but because how I'm perceiving that trigger. I looked down and I had my hands on the levers. For the first time, I had an idea of what I could do beyond staying sober that would make a difference in how I felt in here. And as that began to change, I began to realize that I was putting energy out into the world that was inviting back energy much different than I'd ever experienced before. And I wanted more of it.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me think about how I define attitude when it comes to working with athletes, performers, leaders, is deciding what we focus on and also deciding what to believe about what we're focusing on.
Yeah.
And we just had this conversation this morning with my wife about how to calm the storm. And either helping other people calm the storm or the storm within. And the interesting piece is when we do that internal work, then the waves, the wind, the currents, they calm on their own, or at least our response to them begins to change, right? We no longer are suffering because of the external influences and what people think and the pressures and everything else that's happening externally. Yeah, it's really about an orientation shift, going from everything outside of me has to be a certain way for me to be okay, to, oh, I can be okay. And then things seem to kind of domino in that direction. And I remember, I want to tell a quick story just so I don't forget, because I know that this is going to, go down a rabbit hole here of us just going back and forth. Is I have kept all of my journals in the last 10, 12 years that I have been journaling on almost a daily basis. And I to the point now where I journal for a good 30 to 45 minutes every day, just letting it pour out. Whatever comes out of me, no judgment. Sometimes it seems like a prayer, whatever, right? And one of the journals, and I have them all in order, stacked up here in my closet, right? And I revisit them from time to time. A lot of them are just collecting dust, but there's one in particular that I know that I go grab. I know exactly where it is, and I revisit it on a regular basis, probably about at least once a year, if not maybe twice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the journal that I was using when you and I began to first work together. And I came to you in two different capacities. The first capacity was to, recognizing that there was something going on in there and that I wasn't okay inside. And then the second capacity was to say, you know what, I think this is something that I'm willing to explore. I think I want to be a coach. And so I hired you to kind of help me understand what it meant to be a coach. And when I look back at that journal, every single time, it makes me legitimately laugh. In the most like open, curious, and yet I don't know if I'm laughing because it's just how I deal with certain things in life, because there's other things that I laugh about. I'm like, why am I laughing at that? But the end of the day is, when I look at that, I'm like, holy cow, how far have we come? And how entangled with our own stories and preferences and beliefs and limitations we once were, right? And to just want to say thank you to you here publicly, to say, like, absolutely set me on the path of liberation, of freedom, right? Because I believe that's any good coach is helping people, helping themselves to be free, as well as helping others to find freedom, whatever they think that next thing is that's going to set them free, right? Help them to pursue that and continue that path of that liberation. So thank you in that. And it always inspires me, the takeaways that I pull from that journal whenever I'm needing some inspiration, that's one of my absolute go-tos. So just wanted to share that with you
Well,
and say thank
that
you.
acknowledgement. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're so welcome. I mean, I was really honored to work with you when we were working together, and it's been a delight to see you and Heidi take off with your coaching practice and see all the people that you're making a difference with. I was just thinking before I signed on to join you here today about the idea of how we're both heading for the top of the mountain, but since you and I were working together, you've gone your own way and taken your own path, and every once in a while we crisscross and we run into each other again and again and again. And we find that we have a lot of things in common, some discoveries that we've made. I believe that we all have non-physical teams that are helping us out, guides, you might call them angels, and that they are kind of pointing me in this direction or that direction. And I have an interest, I have a curiosity, I have a passion. I have a theory, I have a hypothesis, and I really believe that a lot of that gets poked and prodded by my team of guides and angels, and I believe that you have your own team, and so they're guiding you in one direction. I know that you're doing a lot of research. You're working. Is it a doctor or a psychologist that you're working with that does research around the brain and psychology and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Neuroscience specialist.
I really
Yeah.
admire and respect the fact that you back up what you're doing with the research, which is not something that I do. As you know, go from my gut and my experience, and I treat myself as the subject of the experiment. And then once I've done the experiment and I see that it works, I bring it to my clients and I have them try it on for themselves. And so two
Yeah.
different ways of going about it, two different ideas on how to support people, but essentially it's the same thing. What do we need to do to go inside and rediscover and who we really are, and then
Yeah.
leverage.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, it was one of my next questions for you, Bill. You just completely primed the conversation. So
Yeah.
within the research that I do, I also take that research and then I make myself an experiment, right? Like that's kind of has always been my way of doing things. Like, oh, I learned this. Now let's go try it and see if my subjective experience changes, if my objective reality changes based upon these tweaks and adjustments that I'm making from what I'm learning about neuroscience or neuropsychology or epigenetics or quantum physics or even studying scripture, whatever it is, like, let's play with this and see what happens, right?
Mhm.
So my question to you is, what are some of those things that you have explored that have led you on not only your recovery and, staying sober? Obviously, that was one chapter of it, but like this next stage of you being cracked wide open beyond the Byron Katie work.
Mhm.
Now you've ventured into IFS. And so what is a daily, like, it's always more curious to me, like, what does it look like for you to go inward? What does it look like for you to go inward and to stay on this journey, right? Because I think a lot of times we get to a place of a plateau, right? And we kind of think that we know, and we think we've arrived. And so I'm curious to hear from you. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's 2016. I had just come out of a coach training program that I'd spent a year and $15,000 investing in to become a better coach. I enrolled and began that training when I was still a part-time coach. And in the middle of
Mm,
that year, I gave up my job as a mortgage loan originator and went full-time and just kind of jumped into the abyss and have been full-time uh, ever since. That triggered a bunch of fear in me. Uh, and
mm,
while I'm in that coach training program at the very same time, I was halfway through that year in the coach training when I quit my full-time job to become a full-time coach. And then 6 months later, when I completed that coach training, I was so discouraged that I was ready to get out of the coaching business and try to find yet another career. It would have been number 8, I think, at that point. I was 50, I don't know how old, 55, 56 years old at the time. The when I went to the trainer in the coach training and said, I don't feel like I got what I came here for. In fact, I feel less
mm,
confident now than the day that I came into the training. She said to me, some people need therapy. And I at first I felt hurt, offended, insulted by that. I was really angry. And I went home
Mm.
and kind of nursed my wounds for 2 or 3 months and found that I was in kind of a death spiral. I was sinking lower and lower and lower into depression and fear and worry and anger and resentment. And then the thought pops into my head, and maybe this is my team of angels again and guides saying, "Hey, maybe therapy." So I called Brenda Afterhar, who's a therapist that I'd never used before, but I knew her well. I liked her, trusted her, and had 4 sessions with her. And that's when I got introduced to the internal family systems therapy model, which introduced me to the idea that that who I am is made up of a multiplicity of internal influences that the IFS model calls parts. And by the end of that 4th session, I not only had, I thought that what I was going to get back was my performance-based confidence. I'm confident because I know I'm good. I'm confident because I know I can get results. It it was replaced by authentic confidence that was not performance-based at all, but just confidence in who I was. And it was more of a sense than an intellectual mathematical process. 1+1=2 didn't come into it at all. I just noticed that something had shifted within me, and now I had more access to what felt like authentic confidence. That was one of the first big shifts for me that had me getting curious about IFS. But I didn't actually fall in love with IFS until I started the training through the IFS Institute in 2019. And through that training, I learned how to open up even more to the process of getting curious about the parts of me that are hurt and the parts of me that are trying to protect me, and began to understand why I put myself in my own way. And every single time I did this, and this was amazing, Ryan, that every single time that I did this, when it was facilitated by a trained IFS professional that knew what they were doing, I would be surprised about what I would learn about myself from myself.
Yeah.
It was shocking. And I just, I would say almost addicted to it. I got to know more. So your question is, how do I maintain that? How do I go inside, and how do I continue on that path and not get stuck in some plateau? I haven't been on a plateau since 2019. It's been this progressive next step, next step, next step, next step. Learn more, become more aware, work with clients, go inside, check when I get stuck. When I get stuck, when I get triggered, when I'm activated by whatever's happening out there, I know without any hesitation, it's what's going on in here that I need to really look at. Now, do I do it immediately? No. I still want to run down the guy that just cut me off on the highway. I mean, and that might last for 5 seconds before I get my sanity back again. I still want to blame my wife when she gets in my way in the kitchen for the 3rd time. I still want to blame my wife when she gives me advice on something that I already know how to do that I didn't ask advice for. I want to blame her for how I feel in here. But those are all little gifts that show up to remind me, go inside, see what there is to notice. And and that's how I do it now, Ryan. If I get really wrapped up around the axle, I've got a therapist that I can go to and do. I've got several people that I trained within the IFS model, and I'll ask them to help me walk through and hold what is called in the IFS model their self energy, and lend that to me until I can get mine back. What that means is access to the resources that are available to me anytime I can get to them. Anytime the parts of me that are upset can relax enough to let the resources and qualities of self emerge. I know I'm using IFS language, so I'm going to stop right now and see if any of that was confusing to you or possibly to a listener.
We are all leaders. If you're ready to stop waiting and start impacting your environment in a powerful way, we want to connect with you. Click the Book Now link in the show notes to book a call with a Heart First coach and discover what Heart First leadership can look like in your life and in your environment. Now back to the show.
No, I don't think it's confusing to me at all. I mean, I've explored it enough, and I've experienced it with you even, so I have an idea of what you're talking about. I think that one thing I would say is that thing I want to highlight is that we don't know that we're in our own way. And this is the piece where, like, to me, one of the things that I thought of as you were talking there is when I'm talking to the coaches that I work with, in the sense that I'm in a relationship with professionally, I ask them, if you knew tomorrow when you woke up that you were going to be asleep, which means to me, that means that you're going to go back into your patterns, to your sense of not enough, to your unworthiness, to your limitations, that our brain is wired to conserve energy, and it's wired for survival, and it's has all kinds of mechanisms that limit us and that keep us hiding. And so if you knew that tomorrow when you woke up that you forgot again, like, what would you do? What would you put in place in your life to make sure that you wake up? Right.
Mm.
And so that's the piece where it's like, I'm not going to assume tomorrow morning when I wake up, I'm going to have some sort of a reminder in a way that I wake myself back up to myself.
Yeah.
Right. And because that's just how we have to understand how to overcome the limitations of the mind, of the brain, of the system, of the body, of the human experience. And so that's what I heard from you, was that there's this what we call the center when I talk with people who are performers, right? There's a place inside of you that isn't afraid, doesn't doubt, always knows, completely pure, right? And that's your center. And so the more aware of it you become, the greater connection you're able to create with it, the greater capacity you're able to operate from it. And so it's in whatever realm of personal development you're in, like, it's about peeling back the layers so you can actually be like, oh, there is the authentic self, the whatever the terms, right? It's all just terminology of the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's so incredibly powerful. I think that's what becomes addicting, because what the only next option is to be able to unhide, right? Like, that's what I believe all of this is about unhiding, right? And so the mechanisms, like you talked about, of these moments that cause some sort of a disturbance within, is an inspection point to say, oh, here's an opportunity to unhide. Here's an opportunity to release something, to heal something, to love something, to grow,
Mm-hmm.
so that thing no longer limits me. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm always curious about. I tell people, we're all limiting ourselves. Like, how can I no longer limit myself? Like, then that's, that's the unique path. So I love everything that you're saying. I am curious now, as somebody who comes from a background of recovery, it's like almost like the unhiding and recovery, like, aren't they kind of the same, right?
They
Right.
are.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I tell people a lot of times, like, whether you're coming out of a deep, dark place, mental and emotionally, like, mental and emotional well-being and performance are interlinked. So whether you want to be a high performer or whether you want to just get out of the mud, the tools, the mechanisms are the same, right? It's the orientation of what you're using them in. So your work that you do, who are you working with, and what are you passionate about? Besides just your own personal growth, like, you're the experiment, you work on yourself. When you turn to others, who is it that you naturally, organically turn to want to help? Do you turn back to those people in recovery that maybe need some of this type of support to be able to not only stay sober, but yet to then also overcome those limitations?
I do now. As you know, I've been a coach since 2011. And when you and I were working together, that was around 2015. And that's when we had the 5 a.m. club, which was made up of a group of, I want to say five, maybe six men. And
Yeah,
essentially all we
there's
had in common was that they knew you. You brought these men all into the same group. And so some of them knew you from the football days, and some of them knew you from business days. But what they all had in common is that they wanted to become better men. And they all recognized that to become better men, they needed to be focused on themselves. And there was varying degrees of capacity for that. Others were still, as others were still kind of stuck in, if the world would change, I'd be okay. But most of us that were there and had a pretty large capacity for being able to own our own experience, and not hope that the world was going to change to accommodate that. So over the, how long has it been? I guess I'm in my 14th year as a coach now. Have been trying to find my niche, and the natural seemed like I should be working with people in recovery, but I found that I had a lot of my own beliefs that were getting in the way of allowing me to do that. Concerns, I would say, coming from a 12-step background where the attitude is that we give it away for fun and for free. So in 12-step, there's no cost to be in a member of a 12-step program. They pass around the basket and you give what you can if you can give anything. Other than that, there is no cost. And part of the one of the values and traditions of a successful recovery, according to 12-step, is to give and help others, give back what you got. So as a coach, to approach the recovery community that's 12-step trained and ask them to pay me to support them was not well received. And I think a lot of that was projection on my part as well. How do I approach the people that I know that are in recovery and offer them something that they're not getting in the meetings and out of the 12 steps, and ask them to pay me for that? Of course, I had to ask them to pay me for it because I'm going full time as a coach, and I need to sustain my financial future by making money. So I actually steered away from that, and I just started working with whoever was in front of me. And at that time, because I was a mortgage loan originator, that was real estate agents. And I cut my teeth on coaching by offering free coaching to real estate agents in hopes that, this kind of gets us around to the topic I was wanting to focus on too, in hopes that they would give me referrals of their home buyers so that I could loan them money so that I could make a living. That way I was going to really passively and indirectly support myself by doing what I loved, which was coaching, and then doing what I had to do to make money, which was loaning money. It didn't work out great. Very few of those real estate agents referred. So I wasn't a very good producer in the mortgage as a mortgage originator, because I really wasn't into it. All I was in the mortgage business for was to make some money, to pay my bills. What I wanted to be doing was coaching. So I did that for a while. I built groups around people in the business networks that I was involved in. And it wasn't until recently when I realized, so I stopped participating in 12-step about 5, almost 6 years ago now. And as I withdrew, it almost feels, and this is no judgment of 12-step. I'm just talking about my own experience here. It almost feels like when I withdrew from the meetings and from involvement in 12-step, I was pulling myself out of a cult. Don't hear that wrong, please. I'm not saying 12-step is a cult. I made it cultish for myself. I was following the leader. I was following the rules, trying to do everything right. And when I extracted myself from it, I noticed that there was room, more and more and more room within me to consider that other things might be true. There may be other possibilities for recovery beyond the 12 steps. And certainly I knew that I had found some of them, but I began reading a lot of other books that were written by people who weren't 12-step people and had different theories and concepts about recovery. And one of them was Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. And he mentioned in that the IFS model. What I love about IFS is that it's a compassionate, non-shaming approach. I felt shamed in 12-step. I got scared and shamed sober. Shame and fear kept me sober. I was afraid that the disease was going to hunt me down and kill me. That's what I had heard in the meetings. That's what I believed. And when I withdrew from that fear-based motivation and opened up to other possibilities, and then began to use IFS as the model to treat my own recovery, then it made sense to approach others, whether they were 12-step or not, who wanted to find something beyond what they could find in the 12 steps for recovery.
Yeah.
So that's who I work with now. I work with people that are recovering, and recovery to me now means I'm not recovering from alcoholism. I'm not recovering from alcohol addiction. I'm not recovering from anything I've ever been addicted to. All of those were mechanisms that my parts put in place to try to help me. They were trying to help me numb, to escape, to not feel bad. And so what I'm really recovering is whatever those behaviors and substances were there to cope with. What was I trying to cope with? And for me, it was trauma. And for most people, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Unresolved past.
Yeah.
If I can recover from that, if I can resolve what's unresolved, if I can complete what's incomplete, if I can heal what's unhealed, what's been wounded, I don't need the addictions anymore. I don't. So I'm recovering from my trauma, and what I'm recovering is my true authentic self. With that framework, with that understanding, and a compassionate, non-judgmental approach to whatever we've had to do in the past to get this far, even whatever's happening in the moment because of the habits that we've formed over the years to survive, if we can approach this from curiosity and logic and heart, we can recover. Anybody can recover. And recovery means whatever it means to the person that's trying to recover. It doesn't mean I have to be sober every single day. If alcohol's been a problem, for me, it means I'm sober every single day. But for someone else, it might mean I only drink on the weekends, or I stop drinking after 2 drinks, or I only drink socially if it has to do with alcohol. I no longer am attached to that you have to stop drinking completely or else you're going to die from a deadly disease. That may be true for some people, but that's for them to decide, not me.
Right.
Like, I can tell I'm on my soapbox right now, so I'm going to step down.
No, I'm loving it. I'm letting you roll.
I noticed it.
Don't step down. Don't step down unless you want to. A couple of things that I want to circle back on that you said there. So thank you for that, because I always love it when somebody who's passionate gets on a roll, because I do the same thing, and I don't I always love it when I'm like, ooh, I hope someone recorded that, because why can't it always pass through? Why can't it always pass through me that easily? Right. So I'm glad that we got that recorded for you. Fear-based, right? That here's the thing. It works.
It did.
It works.
It worked for me.
It works in business. It works in sports. You know, when we create egos that are based out of fear, then we go like hell to overcome the not enoughness. Problem is that there's never anything that you're ever going to accomplish or achieve or experience is ever going to overcome that not enoughness, right? So you put yourself in this washer machine, and the end result becomes either, what's the point? Because you think you did something, but you still don't feel the way you thought you were going to feel, right? Or you fall short in some way, shape, or form. So that now I'm not good enough.
You said something during the Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching podcast that you joined us on that I've heard you say before, but it's just such a great example of this. You are on the field celebrating, arms still up in the air, confetti still falling on the field. I don't know if you said that, but I'm imagining this in my mind. And
Sure, yeah.
You've just won.
There may have been confetti. I don't know.
You've just won the national championship, and you noticed the thought, all right, let's do it again. And in that moment, you caught it. What? All of these years I've been working towards this point. It's happened. I've achieved it. I've accomplished it. And there's a voice saying, let's do it again. It's because of what you're talking about right now, because you cannot overcome a false belief with the accommodations that you make to work around it. You can't.
That's right.
The belief itself needs to be destroyed. And by that, I'm not suggesting that we go to war. What I am suggesting is that we have to see that the belief itself is a false concept. And once we see and expose it, and once we see that and it falls apart, what happens is it's not replaced by another belief. It's replaced by the truth.
Yeah. My space. Yeah. Yeah. And so then you go to work to then buffer yourself because what you're doing is not working. Right. So you buffer with all kinds of distractions.
Oh, you mean when the belief is still in place, you do.
When the belief is still in place, right? Then the buffering, you talked about the buffering, whether it be the addictions or you know, TV, whatever distraction, social media. I mean, we don't even know that we're distracting ourselves. We're a culture of distraction, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that piece resonates with me so much, that how do we, shift as a culture from going from, and we're two men having this conversation, right? And so like, it's just easy to like maybe relate it to men in this context, is because we're taught like don't feel, right? We're taught don't feel, and then we're taught, and what we see and what's being modeled is success, is materialistic, is some sort of achievement. It's a title, it's a role, it's a thing, right? That you should be able to see,
Yeah.
you should know, you should see me walk down the street based upon who I'm walking with, how I'm walking, and what the clothes I'm wearing, and whatever else, how I'm spending my time. You
Yeah.
should be able to witness me in the sense of my success. But what we're talking about, I'm going to put a little bit of words in your mouth here. You correct me if I'm wrong, is true success is not going to be viewed. It's not going to be in a trophy case, right? It's not something that anybody else is going to be able to see or witness or observe. It's an internal experience, right? Where you're no longer operating from fear, but you're operating from love. You're operating from being enough. You're operating from that truth, like you talked about, that gets replaced when the fear-based belief is exposed. And when it gets exposed, basically it's able to dissolve, right?
All of
Yeah.
that. I'll agree with all of that. And when you say that it's not something that can be observed, that also is true. But I want to add into that there's at some level we do observe that kind of success in others, and we're drawn to it. And when
Yeah.
earlier I
It may
was
not be
talking,
conscious, maybe more unconscious. It may just be like a vibrational thing, but you know, uh, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, when I was talking earlier about how things began to shift and on the inside, and then that changed how things looked on the outside. That's what I'm talking about. It's like
Yeah.
I don't get this part. You understand this much better than I do, Ryan. But what I noticed in my own experience, like I said, I use myself as an experiment, and I notice the results that I get, that the successes and the failures, lots of them. Those are modalities that I no longer employ as a coach, and I no longer apply to my own life. But those things that I have found that do work, I sure stick with them, because why wouldn't I? And what works is that I'm able to get the results that I want. But what's really working is that I've gotten myself out of my own way. And how that happens is that the beliefs that are held by those different parts of me have fallen apart because they've now been exposed to reality. And the parts
Mhm.
of me that have held the beliefs let go of them and embrace the new reality. And when they do that, and earlier you seem to be pointing to this question: what do I do to maintain it? Here's the really powerful thing about IFS. I don't do a fucking thing to maintain it. I just keep doing what I've been doing. Sorry for the language if you need to cut that out.
No,
But
that's okay.
it's an exciting thing to know, is that using IFS is permanently healing and brings about lasting results that don't have to be maintained.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Because once
when
it's healed, it's healed. Yeah.
It's exactly, healed means whole. Whole means integrated. I've been disintegrated. I've been unwhole. I've been wounded, and I've been injured. I've been in the process now with IFS of healing, returning to full integration. And for the parts of me that get fully integrated and return to wholeness and joining up with the true self of me, now they are my allies, and they help me in life to honor my values, to honor my purpose, to help me accomplish and achieve anything and everything that I want to do. I'm having so much fun, Ryan, being a coach right now. And I have been having this for you. And I talked last September. You said, "How's business?" I said, "It's horrible. I'm thinking of doing
Hmm.
something else." You remember that?
Hmm. I remember.
Yeah. And I went away and I did some soul searching, and I worked with some of my parts, and what my parts revealed to me is, "Bill, you need to do some marketing." And another part said, "But I hate marketing. God, I hate marketing."
There's the conversation.
And so I gave voice to that. I let that part of me speak with one of my former clients, someone like you who I trained to be a coach. And she said, well, do you ever call, what's Meredith have to say about this? Meredith is a common friend who I'd referred to this person, and because I thought she could help her get organized. And she said, well, Meredith is a marketing wizard. Why don't you give her a call? So I kind of trust that my angels, my guides, my team, the people I've surrounded myself will give me reflection to help me see myself better, so that when I lose myself, when I lose sight of who I really am and what's really true for me, I can have that reflected back. And I've cultivated an internal environment in such a way that when somebody gives me feedback like that, I receive it openly, and I don't push it away because something inside of me got offended. No, I want to know how I'm being perceived, not so that I can change who I'm being or who I am, but let me try that again. Not so that I can change who I am. That's not possible, but to change who I'm being by having my center, as you say, myself be in the leadership position rather than one of these parts that are still attached and tethered to the past. So I reached out and I asked Meredith for some help. And since then, I've had the best 6 months, 7 months I've ever had in my career in terms of people being attracted to me. My energy shifted because I got help from somebody that knew how to market accurately and well and within my integrity. And now people are attracted to me. I get to work with them. And the more I get to work with the people that match who I can help, like authentic men that want to be authentic, people that want to be in recovery, even though it appears they already are, people that are struggling with those kinds of ideas, they're being attracted to me now. I'm filling up groups. I practically have a waiting list for one-on-one clients now, and I get to have fun having my own business and being a coach. Feels like I'm like in the flow, and it feels like that every single day, Ryan.
Awesome. So tell me about this authentic man. I know you run groups that are specifically for men. You mentioned that in that last little go around there. So I want to hear what this means to you, and what are these groups? What are you doing with these men? Who are they? How are you helping them? Yeah, what's that look like?
There's such a need for men to be supported and such resistance to it. And it makes sense that men would resist being part of a group, especially if the idea is that we're here because we're broken or that there's something wrong with us. Especially if it means that we're asking for help, because most of us have learned that asking for help means that we're weak. There's something wrong with us. But something about this IFS model makes it possible for men to come together and begin to confront those kinds of beliefs in a very curious, compassionate way, and challenge what we've been told must be true about us. As a man, this is true about you. I bring these men together. We challenge those beliefs based on what's happening in their lives now and the difficulties that they're encountering. These men, what they almost all have in common is that they give. They have a tendency to give to others so that they can get what they need without asking for it. And it never works. And these men end up feeling resentful. And because they have nothing else in their toolbox for how to be in a relationship with someone, they keep going back to the well and giving, not getting what they hope to get back, getting upset, now being labeled as an asshole, and as the problem in the relationship with what they were giving to get, being threatened with abandonment and rejection, re-upping their game to give even more. It's time to bring in the roses, hoping that that's going to work. I mean, it's this vicious cycle. It doesn't work. And when it doesn't work enough that either the marriage is going to end, or the man is thinking of ending his own life, or he's going into a death spiral of depression and anxiety, and it's affecting his work and his ability to show up and provide the value that we've been trained that we're supposed to provide. My job as a man is to provide the stability and the security in the relationship. But if I'm mentally torn up inside with resentment, fear, unworthiness, the list could go on and on and on. And if I have somehow worked it out in my own mind that the very person that I want to love and be loved by is the biggest enemy in the world and I have to live with her, we got a problem, a big problem. And most men have no idea how to solve that. So these authentic men groups I use the IFS model to coach these men so that they can recognize their inauthenticity and deal with what it is in them that gets in the way of their authenticity.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love, being able to create these spaces where we're able to come together and have real conversations that create lasting change, right? I mean, it's so needed. And what it makes me think about is the culture that we have that's so incredibly externally focused. I mean, we already have a natural certain amount of external focus as it is anyway. Uh, because of how our brain works, right? To try to source a level of safety. And then you add in the information age, you add in social media, you add in extra news and everything else. And now we become what's called overly externally focused. This depletion happens. We then try to even over please, over strive, over accomplish, over whatever, right? Decreased, even a further decreased sense of self, decreased confidence, less resources to inhibit negative thought. So negativity even has more of a grip on us. And in this, it becomes this vicious cycle, which over enough time, anxiety, depression becomes the end result because legitimately we're just giving all of our resources, not only our energy, but even our sense of worth and identity to something that's outside of us that's conditional, right? And it doesn't last, right? Whether that be your example that you brought up in my story of the national championship, I had put my identity, my sense of worth in whether or not we won that game.
Yes.
Right. And even though legitimately within 5 minutes of winning that game, I was like, well, shit, gotta do it again, right? Like, when does this vicious cycle ever end? Or whether it's putting my sense of worth in a relationship, in somebody else being okay, which we've all been there, right? If you're okay, I'm okay.
Good morning, how am I?
And yeah. And then just no longer playing that game. So learning how to legitimately restore, right? Restoring our center, restoring our sense of self, restoring our energy or resources so we can reconnect to a sense of self that is of worth and of enough to rebuild our self-concept into a stronger, more supportive self-concept that allows for us to have the resources to, because there's still going to be some negativity that pops up. It's still going to be those moments, right?
Absolutely.
But now you have the resources to inhibit those moments, right? And then coming back full circle to our conversation is, if you have those resources, you have the community and the conversations. It's like, we got to be in these conversations to create that as a possibility. So then we have the attitude where we're able to decide what we want to focus on and what we're going to decide about what to believe about what we're focusing on. But if we're just completely depleted, and every bit of my sense of self and resources in some vehicle or something outside of me or someone outside of me that's going to come and go, that has the potential of changing, right? Then I'm not going to feel like I have any control over my life whatsoever, right? And so, yeah. Any last bits of piece here? So the last things that you feel like you maybe haven't shared that you'd want to share, or any sort of advice for somebody who is potentially listening to this going like, oh, this resonates with me, right? Where would somebody even start? Like, what's just one step that a man could take to take a step towards authenticity?
I'll share an exercise that was given to me that I used 3 years before I met my current wife. 9 years after my second marriage ended. 7 of those years, I was completely abstinent, trying to protect myself from getting so triggered that I might just land back into another toxic relationship. Someone had suggested, or I read somewhere, make a list of what you want and make a list of what you don't want if you're ever going to be in a relationship again. So what I would suggest, so let me, rather than telling that story, and I'll wrap it up by telling you how that went for me. Let me just tell you what I would suggest. That so if there's a man, anyone, man or woman, who would like to recover their authentic self, let's have you start by noticing what you're experiencing in your life that you really would rather not be experiencing. And start with a category of life. Start with career, start with a relationship, start with the way you do self-care or don't. Start with fun and joy. Pick an area. Let's just say it's relationship.
Mhm.
And let's just say even more narrowly that it's your significant other committed relationship. What is it
Mhm.
that you never ever want to experience in a relationship again? Whether it's the one that you're in now, or if you're leaving that one and that one's not going to work out, the next one or the next one. What is it you
Right.
never ever started this exercise? I wrote down everything I could think of that I wanted in a relationship. And I'd been in several relationships. All of them kind of crashed and burned. All of them did. And I came up with 10 or 12 things over the course of 20 minutes that I really knew that I wanted in a relationship. So I switched gears and began to list the things that I didn't want. And over the next 20 minutes, I wrote over 60 items down as fast as I could that I didn't want. I had full access to the inventory of what I didn't want. I didn't have a lot of access to I didn't have clarity about what I did want. I took those 60 plus things and I considered the exact opposite. And
Mhm.
then, for example, on my list, I don't want to be in a relationship where I'm constantly criticized. Then I went to the exact opposite. So if I don't want to be constantly criticized, what would be the 180-degree opposite of that? I want to be constantly praised. I don't want that. What do I want? Somewhere in the middle there, I want something, though. What is it? Oh, and what I came up with is I want to just feel like I'm respected by her. I want to know that she respects me. So I crossed out on the left side of the page, I crossed out being constantly criticized, and I wrote in, I am respected. And I wrote it in present tense, I am respected. So I made up that list of over 60 things that I wanted. I think it was even closer to 65 or 70 things that I knew clearly that I wanted. Absolutely. No doubt I want this in a relationship. I was doubted whether I could have it or not, but I knew what I wanted. 3 years later, I met my current wife, and 2 months later, I looked at the list, and all but three or four of those were already evident in that relationship. So again, hadn't done much more than making the list and continued to treat myself as the experiment in life where I can personally develop and heal. And I attracted her into my life, and turns out that I was the man that could attract her, and we have this beautiful relationship, and we'll be married for 11 years this summer. And that's
Yeah.
after a series of nothing but toxic relationships for me. So if somebody wants to
Interesting.
get authentic, then, and this might come as a surprise. I think most people, when they think, I need to change, that they're going to have to sacrifice and suffer. I need to change. That means I need to accept the fact that I have to sacrifice and suffer. The exact opposite is true. In order for me to change, I needed to point myself in the direction of true north. And true north for me is, what is it that I'm here for? And I know what I'm here for when inside I feel empowered when I focus on it. That which I'm supposed to be doing has me feeling empowered, inspired, motivated. I've got the energy for it. In fact, it energizes me when I'm pointed in that direction. We think that we have to face all the crap, all the negativity, all the crap that we've done. We need to focus on that. But the truth is, the more we focus on that, the bigger it gets and the more it takes over. When I focus
Yeah.
on what it is that I want, it's not magic. Even though I don't understand exactly how it works, I think you do. I know that it's not magic. All I know is that when I focus on that and pay attention to how it feels inside and continue to move in that direction and not be um, distracted by the old habits and the old patterns, that comes to pass. And the more that comes to pass, the more energized I am. And I don't have to restore that center or self. It's there. It's always been there. What's happened is the negativity, the parts of me that are still tethered to the past, they're still back there in the past. And they're saying, but what about us? And I'm saying, yeah, watch. This is better. You want to come with me? And they do. They
Hop
absolutely
on
do.
board.
Yep, absolutely.
I absolutely love that. And I can, if you want it offline, I'll give you the explanation of exactly what you're talking about when it comes to the neuroscience behind that. And it's 100% supported.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you, it's 100% supported in
I've heard
neuroscience
you
and
talk about it.
neuropsychology.
I've read it myself, but I mean, I just
Yeah,
acknowledge
yeah,
you for really making sure that that scientific evidence is there to support this.
yeah. So tell me where can people find you, Bill?
I think the easiest and
Where can
best,
people find you? Where's the best place?
yeah, just go to my website, billtierneycoaching.com. And there's
There it
all
is.
kinds
All
of
right, awesome.
opportunities
Well,
to learn about what I have to offer and how to get a hold of me.
I will put that in the show notes and just thank you so much for this incredible conversation and everything that you're doing in the world and your influence, positive influence, and guiding light in my life. So thank you again, Bill. This has been amazing.
Been my joy. Thank you, Ryan. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Remember, leaders go first, alignment matters, and the environment that you create is the legacy you'll leave. We'll see you on the next episode.